So this is the box a KeyCult comes in, and if there's anything that really helps justify the crazy price of a KeyCult, it's definitely the unboxing and the whole experience of purchasing one. I think it's incredibly cool. The fact that most people who are purchasing these do get to completely customize their choices and options is what makes these so special. And this one, like some others, was actually in an auction. So KeyCult is known to do these kind of Victory style auctions and other sorts of auctions. And generally what happens is the higher bidder wins. So a lot of the KeyCults out there in the wild aren't actually fully commissioned ones, and instead were ones that were sold or purchased during these raffles. So this keyboard is about 1.5 years old at this point, still fairly new, and it's obviously gone through a couple owners. I'm not the first owner, and the person I got it from I also don't think is the first owner, but I could be wrong on that. What I do know is that this is an incredibly special keyboard because there are very few out there in this specific colorway, which is the main reason I bought this keyboard, was just because the colors were so perfect and they matched so perfectly, which of course you will see in a second. So the KeyCult comes in this really nice sturdy box, and you kind of have to rip that seal to open it, and of course if the seal is ripped, it means the KeyCult has been opened before. Now obviously when you open your KeyCult, it's not going to look like this. It's not going to be fully built like mine is, but I still wanted to show you guys kind of this unboxing experience because it's still, at the end of the day, one of the more important things I think about the whole purchasing of a KeyCult or purchasing of any product, and of course the KeyCult is no different here. Another thing that you get in the box is you're going to get this kind of nice microfiber cloth. You can use this to clean the KeyCult or whatever. You've probably seen it before. And of course the other thing it's going to come with is a thank you card in this nice sealed envelope, and you get this really cool card which actually certifies that your KeyCult is authentic. When you're making something this desirable and sought after, there's always going to be cheap knockoffs and things like that. So what they did here is, by matching this card to the actual engraving on the keyboard itself, you'll know that it is in fact the same keyboard, which I think is really cool because again, when you're spending this much money, you want to know that what you have is legit. These cards are actually insanely cool. I know that they started making some aluminum versions of these. I don't know how you get those, but I would absolutely love to have those just as another thing to hoard because I think they're so cool. But this one of course is just made out of paper like the regular ones you would get with the keyboard. And again, you can see serial number 2, and this one was again released in December 2019. So I don't know if this is the second KeyCult 65% ever made, but I do know it's the second one in this specific production run. So that is insanely cool and just something special I thought I would show you guys. And of course you will get this with your purchase of a KeyCult. So again, your keyboard would not come pre-built like this. First of all, let's just talk about the finish of this keyboard. It is so insanely nice. The blue is just right up my alley. I love this blue, and obviously it is an e-white coating on the outside. If you guys ever see a white keyboard that's aluminum, more often than not it's going to be an e-white coating, and the reason that's done is because it's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to achieve a white anodization. So whenever you see a keyboard like this, usually it means it's e-white, and you can actually feel the difference if you touch the textures, of course very carefully because you don't want to end up scratching your very expensive keyboard. And probably the most recognizable feature of a KeyCult is this back weight, which I just think is so cool. It really sets it apart from the other keyboards out there. You'll also notice that this weight continues all the way around the keyboard. The whole point of this keyboard is to try to really have this kind of seamless design throughout, and I think they achieve that probably the best way you can. Of course, keeping in mind that there's certain functions of a keyboard that kind of need to be done in order to make it sound good and all these sorts of things. So with an actual like fully seamless design, it's very hard to do, and I think they've done a great job here. So taking the keyboard apart, again, this is the top piece, and this houses some of the gasket mounting that is in place to prevent the plate from actually touching the keyboard itself. So the plate is sandwiched essentially between these two gaskets on both the top and the bottom piece. So again, this is how you're supposed to do gasket mounting. I've seen gasket mounts in the past that are not executed properly, and what ends up happening is because the fit is so tight and the gaskets are being pressed down on so hard, you kind of lose the whole benefit of doing a gasket mount, which again is sort of this nice plush feeling when you're typing. It doesn't feel quite as stiff, and it does reduce the vibrations as well. So overall, gasket mounting is probably one of the better options for building a keyboard. Here is the weight, which has the other gaskets on it. So this weight is what you see around the sides of the keyboard and on the bottom. It's a single piece, which is insanely cool, and I don't even want to know how hard it was to make this, because with the design on the back and everything, this must have been extremely hard to make. The color here on this anodization is also perfect. I honestly noticed like 0 blemishes or anything like that. So this is just screwed in place with a couple of screws, and this is actually where you will see the details. So again, it has the KeyCult logo here, number 1 of 65. And if you'll notice here in the bottom right, this is where you'll notice this sort of serial number, which again, you can use to verify that your keyboard is legit with the card that you also get. Here you'll see the daughter board, of course, where you actually plug the PCB into the keyboard itself. That is screwed into the bottom, and this little finicky cable you want to be very careful with, but of course by plugging this into the PCB, that's what gives it power, and it just sort of lays on top of that. So everything has been thought through so well with this keyboard, all the design, everything about it. If they didn't do this, then the USB would likely be higher up on the keyboard or somewhere not centered, but by doing this unique design with the PCB and the wiring, they're able to have this centered near the bottom of the keyboard, which I think again is just a nice touch. So here is the PCB for the KeyCult. Again, it has this red, dark red color, and this is a very recognizable part about KeyCults. I don't think they'd ever change this because it just is a very recognizable part. You see this, you know it's a KeyCult. There's not many other companies making this bright red PCB like this. Also, of course, you will know that it is a Wilbitech PCB, and if you're new to keyboards and you don't know what that means, it just means it's done really well because Wilbitech is very good at doing these PCBs, and of course KeyCult has their logo on here as well, so you know it's all custom specifically for the KeyCult. Now on the bottom, you'll notice that this is a solder keyboard, and there is a spot for per switch LEDs, but the keyboard itself and the PCB itself doesn't come with regular RGB LEDs like you might expect on a keyboard this expensive. I believe the stabilizers in here are clear Durock, but I'm not 100% sure. They do have a gold plated wire, and of course they fit the build so perfectly. If I saw cherry stabs on this, I would be heartbroken. So the fact that whoever built this put those in, I just think that is amazing. And of course it matches the Zelio switches so perfectly, and these are not your average Zelio switch. So I have some Zelio switches, of course, here that you can see. I've used them myself, and I actually have to put them in my top tactile switch list. They are some of my favorites to use, and these ones are particularly special because these have been spring swapped with Sprit springs. I think that's what they're called. These are the slow version, and this kind of gives you a very slow curved tactile feel. I think these are probably in the higher weight, probably 63 grams, but I don't know. But either way, the thok on this is insane. I don't think I've felt switches quite like these. I have to admit it was done really well, whoever made these switches, and just this spring swap just did something to this switch that I can't explain, and it just feels really good. Honestly, I have to say it, I actually prefer the design of these first iterations of the KeyCult, and I know that's probably going to sound a little corny coming from someone who has the older one and doesn't have the newer one, but something about this old design is just so perfect. And yes, the new one looks fantastic as well, but I just really have a place for this in my heart, and I think these will likely appreciate over time. I don't see them going down in price, that's for sure, and they've definitely gone up since they were first made. So of course, the only thing I'm actually modifying with this keyboard is the keycaps, and I just so happen to have the absolutely perfect keycaps for this build. In fact, the person who I got this from said that they were also using Meizu on it, and of course if you've been on my channel you know that I am a big fanboy of Meizu, so I whipped out my set and I built this keyboard. And for those of you who might be asking what happened to my previous daily driver keyboard, well, there will be a new video on that soon, so just stay tuned for that. But again, of course, Meizu was the perfect keycaps for this build. And that's pretty much it about this keyboard. Again, it is a keyboard at the end of the day, so there's only so many things to talk about, but it is just such an interesting and unique design. It kind of put a new perspective for me, being someone who had never owned a keyboard this expensive and finally got my hands on a KeyCult. I can totally understand the hype about them now. Do I think they're worth the full super expensive price tag? Probably not, but again, there's no other companies that are really doing this, and if you compare this to a lot of the other really expensive sought after keyboards in the hobby, KeyCults are one of the only ones that actually fetch this high price from the beginning. So I think it's really interesting because yes, obviously there's a lot of hype involved, but again, you can tell these just small attention to detail, they really do care about making great keyboards, and that's something I can get behind. I think that idea alone makes it worth purchasing one of these, so if you ever have the money or you're looking for one, definitely check them out. And of course, I'll leave a link in the description of this video to KeyCult's website, just in case you have deep pockets and you're looking for one of these yourself, but please don't spend your stimmy checks on them because you might need those and you never know what's gonna happen. But again, just a really cool experience being able to finally own and build one of these myself.